My name's Thea Morgan. For 8 years, I've led one of the most high-performing engineering teams in the company, Team B, though the title never did us justice. Before that, I spent 15 years in the field, coordinating supply chains in refugee camps across 3 continents. Not exactly the kind of background you'd expect for a tech leader, but it made me damn good at solving problems no one else could. We weren't just employees. We were a unit, battle-tested, fiercely loyal, and unstoppable when the pressure was on. 3 days ago, I left for a regional conference. The timing couldn't have been better. Our quarterly numbers were stellar. Every project deadline met. I'd even secured extra budget for advanced training. I boarded the return flight, thinking about how proud my team would be. How maybe, for once, we could catch our breath. But the moment the elevator doors opened on Monday morning, I knew something was wrong. The East Wing, our wing, was silent. No tapping keyboards. No low hum of conversation. Just empty air. Finola, I called for my lead developer. No answer. I stepped inside our workspace and froze. The desks, gone. The monitors, gone. Even the plants we'd kept alive through endless late nights had vanished. All that remained were pale dust outlines where our things had been. Luxley from accounting passed by, eyes flicking toward the room and then back to me. "You should probably check the basement," he said quietly. The basement? We didn't even have an office in the basement. The elevator ride down felt like a slow-motion drop into something I didn't want to face. When the doors slid open, I wove through storage rooms and maintenance closets until I found it. A sheet of paper taped to a door. Strong, Engineering Team B, section. Inside, my team was crammed between exposed pipes and humming utility boxes. Monitors wobbling on folding tables. Extension cords snaked across the damp floor. The air reeked of mildew. Wi-Fi barely reached down here, and the bathroom was a single toilet behind a shower curtain. Vega, our hardware specialist of 32 years, looked up from his chair, voice rough. 3 decades here, he muttered, and this is where they put us. I scanned the faces of people who had given everything, who had pulled off the impossible more times than I could count. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. End prize. 10. I climbed back upstairs, my footsteps echoing in the now unfamiliar silence of our old workspace. The East Wing had always been ours. Bright, airy, perfectly positioned between the testing lab and the design team. It was the heart of our operation, the place where ideas became prototypes and prototypes became products. Now, it belonged to one man. He was young, sharply dressed, with dark hair styled like he was about to step onto a magazine cover. His desk, my old desk, was now lined with perfectly framed certificates and glossy commendations. He was arranging them with surgical precision, as if each one was a trophy the world needed to see. And hovering nearby, like a proud parent showing off their prodigy, was Deer, our department head of barely 5 months. Deer's expression was pure adoration, his voice dripping with pride as he gestured toward the newcomer. "Ah, Thea, you're back. Meet Bastian, our new lead innovator. He's going to revolutionize the way this department works." Revolutionize. The word hung in the air like the scent of cheap cologne. Bastian turned toward me, flashing a smile so polished it felt rehearsed. "Pleasure to meet you," he said, his tone rich with self-assurance. He extended a hand, but I noticed he didn't bother to stand. His eyes flicked briefly over me, assessing, and I could almost hear the unspoken thought, "Relic." I shook his hand anyway, grip firm. "Welcome aboard," I said evenly. Deer jumped in before I could say anything else. Bastian's been brought in to inject some fresh perspective. We're pivoting toward high-impact methodologies, cutting-edge workflows. You'll see. I'd seen men like Bastian before. All gloss, no grit. The kind who dazzled executives with buzzwords and vision statements, then stumbled when it came time to get their hands dirty. What Deere hadn't mentioned, or hadn't cared to find out, was why someone so transformative had already changed jobs 3 times in the past 2 years. From the corner of my eye, I could see the empty spot where Finola's workstation had been, the faint outline of Vega's toolbench, and here was Bastian, taking up the space of 7 people who had delivered breakthrough after breakthrough without fanfare. I smiled politely, but inside, something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't just a bad management decision. This was a message, and I'd heard it loud and clear. Back in the basement, the air felt heavier than usual, stale, damp, with that faint metallic tang of rusted pipes. The constant hum of the building's utilities became our soundtrack, the groan of ancient plumbing, the low rumble of the boiler, the occasional clang from somewhere deep in the walls. The space wasn't meant for people, not really. The ceiling was low enough that Vega had to duck under a hanging conduit whenever he walked to the coffee machine. If you could call it that, a sputtering relic rescued from the storage room. Our desks were just folding tables, their surfaces bowing under the weight of monitors balanced like precarious sculptures. Extension cords tangled like jungle vines across the damp concrete floor, some patched with electrical tape that made me uneasy every time I saw it. The Wi-Fi barely reached us. Some days it was like working through molasses, screens freezing, calls dropping mid-sentence, and the bathroom? A single toilet hidden behind a faded shower curtain. We learned to time our coffee intake carefully. Yet somehow, we kept going. We weren't the kind of team that gave up because the view was bad or the chairs were uncomfortable. In a way, this basement felt like every impossible situation I'd ever worked through in my years managing crisis logistics. Limited resources, high stakes, and a group of people who refused to break. Ren, our youngest developer, had this knack for solving problems with elegant code that seemed too simple to be real, but always worked. Fresh out of college, passed over for shinier resumes, she was a natural talent the industry didn't even know it needed. Vega, the veteran, had been weeks from retiring when I convinced him to stay. His hardware expertise wasn't just valuable, it was irreplaceable. He could coax life out of failing systems the way a mechanic keeps an old engine running with nothing but a wrench and instinct. Dax, our quietest member, spoke 5 programming languages but struggled with the human one. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was worth listening to. His code was poetry. Kiri, our testing genius, had written protocols so airtight they'd been adopted as industry standards. Indra was our security architect. Her systems didn't just keep intruders out, they made them wish they'd never tried. And Noor, our data wrangler, could turn chaos into patterns so clear it was like seeing the future. 7 people, each the best at what they did, and all of them down here. I knew Deere thought he'd buried us, that by shoving us out of sight, we'd fade from relevance. But what he didn't understand was that we'd been here before, maybe not in a basement, but in the trenches, where real work happens away from the spotlight. And I was already starting to think about how to turn this exile into our advantage. It didn't take long for the shine to dull. 2 weeks after our exile to the basement, the announcement came. Bastian would be presenting his groundbreaking departmental strategy to the board. Deere's email was full of capital letters and exclamation points. Visionary, revolutionary, game-changing. He practically begged the entire department to be inspired. We weren't invited. Still, Word travels fast in a company like ours. I had friends upstairs, people who'd worked with me long before Dear arrived. By noon, I had the highlights. The presentation started strong. Slick slides, animated charts, buzzwords rolling off Bastian's tongue like he'd been born in a TED Talk. Dear stood at his side like a hype man, nodding so hard I thought his head might snap. Then the board started asking questions, real questions, technical ones. The kind you can't bluff your way through with colorful infographics. What's the projected downtime for the new workflow integration? How does your proposed security protocol comply with existing federal regulations? What's your contingency plan for database migration failure? Bastian froze, smiled, tried to pivot, but the board kept pressing. Someone asked for specifics on his previous successful implementations. He mentioned companies, big names, but skipped over the fact that he'd left each one after barely a year. One board member, a woman who'd been in the industry longer than I'd been alive, cut straight to it. Your resume shows frequent transitions. Can you explain the circumstances of those departures? I wish I'd been there to see it. The stumble, the flash of irritation, the quick glance at Dear for rescue. Dear jumped in with a vague comment about mutual decisions and career growth opportunities, but the damage was done. The room had shifted. By the end of the meeting, the board's enthusiasm had cooled noticeably. Bastian left with his smile still in place, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, as I walked out of the basement, Ren caught up to me. "So, we're just gonna take this?" she asked. I looked at her, young, hungry, brilliant, and felt the weight of the moment. "No," I said, "we're not." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already started something. Quietly, methodically. The kind of plan you don't rush. The kind you let ripen until it's too late for anyone to stop it. When you've spent years running supply chains in war zones and refugee camps, you learn one thing above all else. Never confront a problem head-on unless you know exactly how you'll win. So I didn't march into Dear's office. I didn't send angry emails or demand a meeting with HR. Instead, I started planting seeds. First came the documentation. Every deliverable our team completed from the basement, logged. Every project milestone we hit despite the conditions, logged. Every time Dear redirected resources toward Bastian's pet ideas while ignoring proven initiatives, logged. Dates, times, names. A quiet little archive of truth. Then came the whispers. Not gossip. I don't waste time on that. But I had friends in the right places. Compliance, finance, operations. I started asking questions that sounded harmless, but weren't. Questions about budget reallocations, about performance metrics, about risk assessments that mysteriously hadn't been updated since Bastian arrived. And finally, I reached out to Talia. Talia Chen and I had met years ago, back when she was still grinding her way up in product development. Now, she was the COO of Grayscale Solutions, a company on the verge of launching its own advanced engineering division. We hadn't spoken in months, but within minutes of catching up, I heard the three words I'd been hoping for. Break. We're hiring teams. Primed, not positions, teams. I told her about the basement, about my people, about what we'd done in the last 8 years, and what we could do if we weren't tripping over extension cords and breathing mildew every day. Her silence on the other end wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. "Send me your portfolio. All of it." I did. 2 days later, she called back with an offer. Not just for me, for every single member of my team. Double our current salaries, new equipment, our own space, full autonomy. When I told the team, the reactions were mixed. Ren's eyes lit up immediately. Vega leaned back, folding his arms. Sounds too good to be true, he said. It's real, I assured them. But I didn't tell them my whole plan. Not yet. Because if I'd learned anything from years in the field, it was that timing isn't everything. It's the only thing. And Deer's time was running out. The following Monday, I sat in my car in the parking garage for a full 5 minutes before going inside. My phone was still warm from the call with Talia. She'd made it official. Contracts were being drafted. Salaries confirmed. Benefits beyond anything our current HR would even dream of offering. An office with windows, natural light spilling over brand new desks, state-of-the-art equipment, and the part that hit me hardest. No one above us who didn't understand what we actually did. When I finally stepped into the basement, the smell of damp concrete felt heavier than usual. My team looked up from their monitors, the hum of the ancient HVAC filling the silence. I didn't draw it out. Talia's offer is real, I said, setting my bag down. Double pay, brand new workspace, autonomy. We'd be building a new division from the ground up. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ren let out a laugh that was half disbelieving, half ecstatic. You're serious? Dead serious. Vega leaned forward, forearms on his knees. You're telling me, after 32 years in this company, I could finally work in a place that doesn't smell like mold? Not just that, I said. You'd be helping design it. Kyrie tapped a pen against her notebook, eyes narrowing. What's the catch? There isn't one, I replied. Then, softer. But it's a big leap. And once we make it, there's no coming back. Dex, who almost never spoke during group conversations, looked up from his code. When? Soon, I said. But not yet. Timing matters. We need to be smart. I could see the conflict written across their faces. Hope wrestling with loyalty. Relief tangling with fear. We'd built more than projects together. We'd built trust, battle-tested through impossible deadlines and bad coffee and the shared knowledge that no one else could do what we did. Leaving would mean letting go of the history we had here. Staying would mean letting Deer keep us in the dark, literally and figuratively. I didn't push. I just left the offer hanging in the air, like the faint hum of the pipes above our heads. Because I knew that in the days to come, Deer himself would do more to convince them than I ever could. It started with little things. Deer, who had spent the last 2 months pretending we didn't exist, suddenly began dropping by the basement. At first, it was under the guise of checking in, but the way his eyes darted around, counting heads, scanning screens, told me exactly what he was looking for. He'd caught the scent of something he couldn't quite name, but it scared him all the same. Then came the email. Subject line: strong opportunities for Team B. He invited us upstairs, not to the East Wing, of course, but to a small conference room on the 3rd floor. When we arrived, he was already there with a folder open in front of him, smiling like a man trying to sell a house with a cracked foundation. I've been reviewing your performance metrics, he began, as if the thought had just occurred to him. Impressive work, especially given, well, your current space. Which is why I've spoken with leadership and we're expediting the East Wing renovation. Kyrie raised an eyebrow. Expediting? Yes, Deer said quickly, and once it's done, you'll be back upstairs where you belong. Oh, and we're also offering a 15% salary increase for the entire team, effective immediately. Ren glanced at me, trying to read my reaction. I kept my face neutral, hands folded in my lap. That's generous, I said evenly. Deer leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were conspiring. Look, I know the basement isn't ideal, but these things take time, and... It's been 2 months, Vega cut in. His tone was flat, but I could feel the heat beneath it. 2 months of working in conditions I wouldn't put my garage tools in. Deer's smile tightened. Well, I'm here now, and I want to make it right. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because the truth was, the basement wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a revelation, a clear, unfiltered look at exactly how much we were worth in Deer's eyes. And no amount of raises or renovation promises could erase that. I thanked him for the offer, promised we'd discuss it as a team, and walked out without giving him the satisfaction of an answer. What he didn't know was that the discussion had already happened, and the decision was already made. The message came late in the afternoon, tucked between a stack of routine project updates. From Ian, CEO. Subject, meeting request. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. Just you. No explanation, no agenda. Just those 3 sentences. When I told the team, Fanolo looked up sharply. You think she's trying to stop us from leaving? Ren frowned. Or, make sure we do? I just smiled. We'll find out. The next morning, I took the elevator all the way up to the top floor, a place I hadn't set foot in since Deer took over. Ian's office was everything the basement wasn't. Glass walls spilling sunlight across a panoramic view of the city. A minimalist desk that probably cost more than my first car. She looked up from a stack of documents, removed her glasses, and gestured to the chair across from her. Thea, appreciate you coming. Of course, I said, sitting down. For a moment she studied me the way a chess player studies the board, not looking at the pieces but at the space between them. Then she spoke. I've been reviewing your team's performance over the last 5 years. Consistent, exceptional, often exceeding projections despite reduced resources. That's one way to put it, I said carefully. She leaned back in her chair. And you think I share Deer's view of your value? With respect, I replied. You approved his decision to hire Bastion and pour resources into him with no proven track record. So yes, I assumed you agreed with his approach. To my surprise, she laughed, a short, sharp sound. Deer convinced the board, not me. I was outvoted. And now I get to say I told you so at the next meeting. I tilted my head. Why tell me this now? Politics, she said simply. The board wanted to give Deer free rein. I couldn't undermine him openly. But after the basement situation, the calculus changes. Losing your team is too high a price to let him keep running unchecked. There it was, the shift in the wind. So what are you offering? I asked. Her answer was immediate. A new department, reporting directly to me. Your choice of space, budget control, full autonomy. Better terms than whatever Talia Chen is offering. The fact she knew about Talia didn't surprise me. Information travels fast at this level. I'll need to discuss it with my team, I said. Do that, she replied. But know this. If you walk, the board will start asking why. And I'd rather use that to restructure than to clean up the mess Deer's about to make. When I left her office, I wasn't thinking about the offer itself. I was thinking about leverage. Because now, I had it on both sides. That evening, I called the team together in the basement. No preamble, no warm-up, just straight to the point. We've got 2 offers, I began. One from Talia. One from the CEO herself. Both are good. Both give us more than we have now. But taking either one comes with a risk. Putting all our trust in a single person, a single company, again. The room was quiet. The hum of the old HVAC filled the space between my words. So here's what I'm thinking, I continued. We split. Ren frowned. Split? 4 of us take Ian's offer, stay here, report directly to her. The other 3 go to Talia and build the new division. We coordinate, collaborate, share resources when we can. 2 separate ships, but with the same crew on the manifest. Vega leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. That way, no one has the power to bury us all at once. Exactly. Kyrie tapped her pen against the desk. You think they'll go for it? I've already sounded them out, I said. Both are open to it. In fact, I think they're a little excited by the idea. Indra raised a brow. And what about Deer? I smiled. Deer's not going to know until it's too late to stop it. We spent the next hour hashing out the details. Who would stay? Who would go? How we'd communicate across company lines without raising suspicion. It was the most candid conversation we'd ever had as a team. Fears were voiced, loyalties tested. But by the end, the decision was unanimous. We'd divide, but we'd never be divided. As they spoke, I slipped away to make 2 calls. The first to Ian, confirming the arrangement. The second to Talia, locking in start dates and resources. When I came back, the energy in the room had shifted. No more uncertainty. No more passive waiting for someone else to decide our fate. We were in control now. The summons came at 8:55 a.m. sharp. A junior assistant appeared in the basement doorway, clipboard in hand. The CEO requests Engineering Team B in the boardroom, now. We gathered our materials, meticulously prepared reports, sealed envelopes, and walked the long route upstairs. When the doors to the boardroom opened, the contrast hit me like a blast of cold air. Mahogany table gleaming under recessed lights, panoramic city view, the scent of fresh coffee and money. Ian sat at the head of the table, calm and unreadable. Deer was halfway down, shuffling papers beside Bastian, who wore the same overconfident grin I'd seen on day 1. Thea, Ian said with a small nod, you may proceed. Deer blinked, caught off guard. Actually I was just about to present. Then you won't mind if we start with some context, I said smoothly. I handed the sealed envelopes to my team, who distributed them around the table. The rustle of paper filled the room as board members began flipping through the contents. 5 years of productivity metrics, budget allocations, resource distribution, and projected outcomes under current management decisions. One board member looked up sharply. Dear, were you aware of these figures? Before he could answer, I continued. You'll also find, on page 12, a background check on Mr. Bastian. All public record, court documents, settlements, and employment histories conveniently omitted from his resume. Bastian's smile faltered. That's private. It's public, I cut in, including a wrongful termination suit from his last employer and a class action settlement from the one before that. You hired him without due diligence because you were chasing flash over substance. I let the silence stretch, the weight of the words settling like dust after an explosion. This isn't just about my team being relocated to a basement, I went on. It's about a management approach that ignores proven results in favor of charisma. That diverts resources away from sustainable growth for the sake of appearances. I slid a second set of documents onto the table. Here's our proposal. Split the team. Half remain here under direct CEO oversight. Half join Grayscale Solutions with planned collaboration on select projects. This preserves institutional knowledge, mitigates risk, and creates a cross-company partnership that could strengthen both organizations. From the far end of the table, Talia spoke for the first time. I've reviewed the plan and fully support it. The room shifted. The board murmured. Deer's face went pale. This is a setup, he hissed. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. No, Deer. You set this up the moment you decided we belonged in a basement. I just made sure everyone understood the consequences. The silence after my words was thick enough to taste. Board members leafed through the final pages of my proposal, eyes flicking between me, Deer, and Bastian. The numbers spoke for themselves. Sustained productivity from our team, despite relocation, glaring inefficiencies in Bastian's initiatives, and clear financial risks if Deer's strategy continued. One of the senior members, a woman known for dismantling bad ideas without raising her voice, looked at Deer. Why were we not informed of these performance gaps? Deer stammered, We were prioritizing new initiatives. Some transitions are always bumpy. This isn't a bump, she cut in. This is a cliff. Bastian shifted in his seat. His earlier confidence now wilted. Look, these metrics don't capture the long-term impact of my methods. They capture the delays, the overruns, and the budget drains, another board member interrupted. Facts don't need your interpretation. Aine finally leaned forward, her tone cool and final. The board will vote on the proposal now. It wasn't close. 11 in favor, 1 abstention, 0 opposed. The decision was immediate. The split team model would be implemented within 2 weeks. Half of us would report directly to Aine. The other half would join Talia's new division, with formal collaboration agreements in place. And Deer, effective immediately, he was removed from his role, pending reassignment. Though everyone in the room knew that was code for clearing out his desk. As for Bastian, the board's language was sharper. Contract terminated, effective end of day. I watched their faces, Deer's pale with disbelief, Bastian's twitching with barely contained anger. They didn't look at me as they gathered their papers and left the room. When the vote was recorded, Talia caught my eye from across the table. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The victory was mutual, and we both knew it. 3 hours later, my team and I sat in a corner booth at a nearby restaurant. Contracts signed, timelines set, freedom secured. My phone buzzed with a message from Aine. Board approved. Deer and Bastian are gone. When can you start implementing the new structure? I set the phone down and looked at my team. We're not just starting over, I said. We're building something better. And this time, no one gets to bury us. 2 weeks later, the basement was nothing but a memory. Half of my team moved into a renovated east wing, bright, open, and built to our specifications. The other half walked into Grayscale's brand new engineering floor. Sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The walls were fresh, the air clean, the desks ours to arrange however we wanted. We visited each other often, crossing company lines without the weight of secrecy. On joint projects, we operated like we always had, fast, precise, and in sync. Only now, we had the resources and respect to match our results. Vega, who'd been weeks from retirement, came to me one afternoon with a grin. Guess I'm sticking around a few more years, he said. Feels like I finally get to do the work I love again. Ren thrived under Talia's leadership, her code already making headlines in niche tech circles. Kyrie's testing protocols were integrated into both companies' systems. Dax's code ran quietly and flawlessly in the background, like the steady heartbeat of our success. And me? I kept both sides connected, not just for collaboration, but as a safeguard. Because no single employer would ever hold our future in their hands again. We'd built redundancy into our careers, the same way you build backup systems for mission-critical operations. Word eventually trickled down about Deer. Last I heard, he'd taken a consulting gig, the kind that sounds important, but mostly involves PowerPoints and empty promises. Bastian vanished from the industry grapevine entirely, his golden reputation tarnished beyond repair. One evening over drinks, Ren raised her glass with a grin. To the basement. Without it, none of this would have happened. We all laughed and clinked glasses. And as the conversation flowed around me, I realized the most satisfying revenge wasn't watching someone else fall. It was standing somewhere better, knowing you'd built it yourself. Because in the end, the basement wasn't our punishment. It was our launch pad. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that you can survive being pushed into the dark. You can even thrive there, if you've got the right people beside you. We didn't just walk out of that basement. We carried proof of who we were and what we could do. And when the moment came, we didn't beg for a place back upstairs. We built our own stairs. Deer and Bastion were just the storm. We were the ones who learned how to sail through it. And now, every time sunlight hits my desk in that bright, open office, I'm reminded of one simple truth. The best revenge isn't payback. It's never needing to look back.